Imagine two people walking up the same mountain. The first person starts at the bottom, carrying every supply they will ever need on their back. Every step is powered entirely by their own effort. If they stop walking, they stop moving. The second person starts much higher up the mountain. They still have to walk, but now the slope is gentler, the air is clearer, and there are moving walkways helping them forward even when they slow down. Most people assume wealth works differently. They imagine that every additional dollar is equally difficult to earn, save, and grow. But wealth behaves much more like climbing a mountain. The beginning is brutally difficult, not because the math is complicated, but because almost all progress depends entirely on you. This is why investors, economists, and financial writers have repeated the same phrase for decades. The first $100,000 is the hardest. Not because $100,000 is some magical number, and not because your life instantly changes the moment your account crosses six figures, but because reaching that threshold often marks the moment when your money begins contributing meaningful work alongside your own labor.
To understand why this happens, we first need to look at how wealth is actually built. Most people begin their financial lives with a simple equation. They exchange time for money, pay for housing, food, transportation, insurance, taxes, and dozens of smaller expenses, then attempt to save whatever remains. At first, the numbers are frustratingly small. Someone saving $300 per month accumulates only $3,600 after an entire year. Even after 5 years, assuming no growth at all, they have saved only $18,000. The progress feels almost invisible. This is one reason many people quit. Human psychology is heavily influenced by visible rewards. We enjoy activities that provide immediate feedback, but wealth building rarely works that way. The first few years often feel like running on a treadmill while carrying a backpack full of bricks. You sacrifice today, but see very little evidence that anything meaningful is happening. Yet beneath the surface, something important is occurring. You are building the base that allows compounding to eventually matter. Most people understand compound growth in theory. They know investments can generate returns, and that those returns can generate additional returns. What many fail to appreciate is how weak compounding appears in the beginning, and how powerful it becomes later.
Consider two investors earning an average annual return of 7%. The first investor has $1,000 invested. A 7% gain produces only $70. The second investor has $100,000 invested. That same 7% gain produces $7,000. The investment strategy is identical. The market performance is identical. The difference is simply the size of the asset base. At small amounts, your savings matter far more than your investment returns. At larger amounts, investment returns begin rivaling and eventually surpassing your annual contributions.
This is the transition that makes the first $100,000 so important. When your portfolio is worth $10,000, a strong market year may add hundreds of dollars. When your portfolio reaches $100,000, a similar year may add thousands. When it reaches $500,000, the same percentage gain may exceed what many people save in an entire year. The engine changes. In the beginning, you are pushing the car. Eventually, the engine starts helping. Eventually, the engine does most of the work. This shift is not merely mathematical. It is psychological. During the early stages of wealth building, every setback feels enormous. A car repair can erase months of savings. A medical bill can reverse years of progress. A job loss can completely halt momentum. Because the margin for error is so small, financial stress remains high, even among people who are doing everything correctly. This creates a dangerous illusion. Many people conclude that saving is pointless because the visible results are modest. They compare their slow progress against stories of entrepreneurs, investors, influencers, or lottery winners, and assume they are falling behind.
In reality, they are experiencing the least rewarding phase of the entire process. The first $100,000 requires fighting against several powerful forces simultaneously. You must overcome taxes, you must overcome inflation, you must overcome consumer temptation, you must overcome lifestyle inflation as income rises, you must overcome emergencies, and perhaps most importantly, you must overcome your own impatience. Every dollar saved represents a choice to delay consumption in exchange for future flexibility. That sounds simple, but modern economic systems are specifically designed to encourage the opposite behavior.
Advertising exists to make spending feel urgent. Credit systems allow purchases before savings exist. Social media constantly displays lifestyles that appear normal but are often financially unsustainable. The result is that building wealth frequently feels like swimming against a powerful current. The people who reach six figures are not necessarily smarter than everyone else. Many are simply individuals who manage to remain consistent long enough for the mathematics to begin working in their favor. History provides countless examples of this phenomenon. During the early industrial era, small business owners often spent years accumulating machinery, inventory, and capital before experiencing significant growth. The first stage was slow because every expansion required personal sacrifice. Once enough productive assets were accumulated, growth accelerated.
The same principle appears in modern investing. The first phase involves building capital. The second phase involves capital building itself. Economists sometimes refer to this as the difference between labor income and capital income. Labor income requires your active participation. Capital income comes from assets that continue generating value whether you are working or not. The first $100,000 represents a point where capital income begins becoming noticeable for ordinary people. Not life-changing, not retirement level, but noticeable.
For example, a 7% return on $100,000 equals roughly $7,000 before taxes. That amount may not replace a salary, but it is no longer trivial. It can cover expenses, accelerate future investments, or absorb financial shocks that previously would have caused significant stress. This is where many people experience an important identity shift. They stop seeing themselves as people who merely earn money. They begin seeing themselves as people who own productive assets. The distinction sounds subtle, but it changes behavior. When someone views themselves solely as a worker, income growth often becomes the primary objective. When someone views themselves as an asset owner, attention shifts toward accumulation, efficiency, and long-term compounding. Their decisions begin operating on a different timeline. A purchase is no longer measured only by its price. It is also measured by the future growth that money could have produced. This mindset does not require extreme frugality or deprivation. It simply requires recognizing that every dollar has multiple possible futures. One future involves immediate consumption. Another future involves becoming a productive asset. As wealth grows, the consequences of those choices become increasingly visible. This is why the journey to $100,000 often feels disproportionately difficult compared with the journey beyond it. The early years rely primarily on discipline. The later years increasingly benefit from mathematics. Neither stage is effortless, but they are fundamentally different. The first demands patience without visible rewards. The second provides visible rewards that reinforce patience. And that may be the most important lesson of all.
The first $100,000 does not change everything because it makes someone wealthy. For most people, it does not. It changes everything because it proves that the system is finally working. The savings habit exists. The investment base exists. The compounding engine exists. The financial identity exists.
From that point forward, progress is no longer powered entirely by human effort. Money begins contributing its own momentum, quietly generating growth in the background while time continues doing what it has always done. And in the world of wealth building, that transition is often the moment when the impossible starts looking inevitable.